He saves people because it's the right thing to do. We could use a little bit more of that.
Hey, welcome back to ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy, and let's talk about all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things you might have missed in the new teasers for Superman. Now, as you guys know, I love Superman. He is my favorite superhero. I got all weepy watching the last trailer, so I am pumped for this movie. Now, we're excited to break this trailer down, and I want to let you guys know that me and Doug will be at the Super Jersey Comic Expo next weekend, selling merch from our booth, hosting panels, and best of all, hosting a special ScreenCrush live show for a night of comedy, nerding out, and mocking our lessers. Links for that, our merch store, and all things ScreenCrush are below. Now, before we get too far into the trailer, I do want to turn back the clock to that Cinemacon special look that was released a couple of weeks ago. Now, we didn't cover it at the time because we have so much stuff going on right now, but I wanted to take a minute to break that footage down before we get into this new full trailer. So this movie is the first live-action chapter of the new DCU, DC's answer to the MCU's interconnected universe. It is written and directed by studio co-president James Gunn, who of course gave us this.
So smart, me. Enjoy books so much.
Gunn's previous entry into this franchise, Creature Commandos, was pretty great, and it showed us that this universe is already lived in, with many superheroes already running around the planet. But Gunn's version of Superman is going to be fairly new to this scene, so the movie is going to adapt elements from some of the greatest all-time Superman comics, like Superman Birthright. Now, from what we've seen so far, this movie features a tone and Superman that are bright and optimistic, and I think that countering that bright tone of Superman with a public that fears and mistrusts him is a great idea. See, Superman can beat up almost any villain, but winning over the public takes nuance and care. And I think these ideas are also reflective of the time we live in. People are very cynical right now. There's like a generation who grew up thinking Superman was a macho dude who goes around snapping necks. And this scene shows us that this is not who this Superman is. So we begin in the Arctic, the traditional home of Superman's Fortress of Solitude. In the Donner movies, it's where Clark throws his Kryptonian crystal, and in the Snyder films, it's where they kept the crashed Kryptonian ship. And then Superman lands. Now, this is of course reminiscent of how his rocket first came to Earth. So this is showing us a rebirth of a new kind of Superman, a Superman who can get the living shit kicked out of him. This overhead view even looks like he's in the fetal position, as he is waiting to be reborn with sunlight. Now, the camera pushes in to show his bloody face as he whistles for Krypto, the superdog. So in Golden and Silver and Bronze Age comics, Krypto was Kal-El's boyhood puppy who found his way to Earth. Now, this has been altered and changed over the years, with some creators thinking that a superdog is just too silly. So Gunn including him is a huge nod to the kind of Superman story he's telling. And I love this scene where Krypto comes at Superman with all his puppy energy, using his strength to actually hurt Superman.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he's pretty immature.
Oh, come on. You were a puppy once. Now, Superman was always my favorite superhero because, in part, he's a country boy who can fly anywhere around the world. So I grew up in a small town, so going to places like Paris or Italy felt like I might as well have been traveling to the moon. But as I got older, I too learned to fly around the world.
Wait, you've been around the whole wide world? What's it like?
Yeah, man, I've been to Scotland, Narnia, Paris, Italy, and now that spring is here, I hope that a lot of you are getting to plan your own trips abroad. And I have to tell you, traveling to all those different places used to be a huge hassle for me. I would land at the airport, buy a local phone or a phone card or a SIM card, or pay the phone company huge roaming fees. Trust me when I tell you that Saley eSIM is the way to go. If you want to start traveling this year, you need this app. Everywhere I went in the Scottish Highlands, I could use my phone to watch videos, play games, and best of all, share my experience on social media. Also, when I had to work, it made it way easier because I could stream and upload videos from my phone. So here's how Saley works. You download it from the App Store, and then you activate it before you even arrive at your destination. That way you have internet as soon as you land. You choose your data plan and then make sure to apply our coupon code ScreenCrush for 15% off. Now that is our exclusive discount. Then you can make calls, use the internet, and it makes traveling so much more fun and stress-free. Saley is easy and all plans are compatible with iOS and Android devices. Plus they offer full 24/7 customer support and a full refund if your device is not eSIM compatible. Guys, Saley is such a game changer in my life. It is easy and affordable. It's like bringing a little piece of home with you when you travel. So to get an exclusive 15% off discount on Saley data plans, use our code ScreenCrush at checkout or click our link below or scan this QR code. You will not regret it. This is one of my all-time favorite products we talk about on this channel. Now, back to Superman. Now, it takes Krypto a while to catch on to Clark's meaning, similar to this great Gunn scene.
That's my underwear. Yeah, I was pretty sure he didn't know what you were talking about.
Notice Krypto's comic-accurate studded collar and his new Superman logo for his dog tag. Now, Gunn hasn't revealed much about Krypto except that he's fairly new to Superman's life and he's not trained, so there's a little bit of a cute conflict between the two of them. Then the crystal Fortress of Solitude rises up, reminiscent of the version that we saw in the Richard Donner films. Now, it only rises when Superman is near. Similarly, in the old Silver Age comics, the Fortress of Solitude could only be opened with a massive gold key that only Superman could lift. And then the logo lights up the door, kind of like the Mithril moon letters that open the gates of Moria. The robots inside, notice, are individually numbered, and their design came straight from the incredible comic book All-Star Superman. They speak Kryptonese as they move his body.
Hey, Colonel.
Now, the robots are voiced by Alan Tudyk, who also voiced Dr. Phosphorus in Creature Commandos. Number 5 is Michael Rooker, who has appeared in every James Gunn movie, and 12 is voiced by Grace Chan. And then the fortress shifts, and these lenses move into place to focus the energy of the yellow sun onto his body. Now remember, Superman gets his powers from the yellow sun of the Earth, which is why in Batman vs. Superman, the sun is able to bring him back so quickly from near death. But in this movie, it's not as simple as him just getting a tan. He has to take on pure, concentrated radiation to heal his wounds. And as he screams from this intense radiation, we transition to the new Superman theme, which is a reimagining of the classic John Williams march. Now, that takes us into a trailer that is almost exactly like the previous trailer, so now let's break down this new teaser. Now, it's mostly BTS, but we also got some important character reveals that tell us a little bit more about the story, the theme, and most importantly, what kind of Superman story James Gunn wants to tell. The teaser begins by selling people on the idea of James Gunn doing a Superman movie to begin with. Like, as you guys know, James Gunn came from a low-budget horror background, and he usually tells stories about misfits and renegades. So on the surface, he's a strange choice to make a Superman movie.
James didn't know that Superman was in his future. He wasn't sure that that was the one he should be doing.
In fact, Warner Brothers offered James Gunn Superman back in 2018, but he turned it down so he could focus on the Suicide Squad instead, because he didn't feel ready to take on the character. Then Gunn talks about his personal connection to the 1978 film.
Being a child, I loved the purity of Superman. It was a time when I was starting to understand what movies were. And
they have been very deliberate about this, trying to make a connection between those early Richard Donner, Christopher Reeve films and this movie. For instance, the documentary, Super/Man, was released as the first DC Studios film. This movie has the same title font as the originals, and they reappropriated the John Williams theme. Then we see them on location in the Arctic, filming the scene that we talked about earlier. We even get to see the shot that opens that footage, where the camera pushes in from overhead on a crane. Then Peter Safran says,
and then he called me one day and he said, I have a way in.
Now, James Gunn has already announced a few comics that inspired this film, including All-Star Superman and Superman Birthright. Now, Birthright is particularly interesting. It features a Superman who is in his first year as a hero, and Lex Luthor discovers old Kryptonian holograms that depict a massive Kryptonian war fleet. So he releases these images to the public to make people think that Superman is an advanced scout for an alien invading army. And it works. The people distrust Superman.
I had been trying to crack it for years.
I think the idea of Superman being an outcast would have really spoken to Gunn, and I think he's found a way to take that theme and adapt it into our world today. Like the 1978 Superman was a breath of fresh air. After Watergate, Vietnam, scandals, and assassinations, you know, we needed
a little old-fashioned.
That Superman promised a return to a simpler time.
He saves people because it's the right thing to do.
So I think that Gunn has looked around at the America of today, when we're all divided over everything, and he wanted to insert a character who is persecuted for simply doing the right thing. Like, we live in an age where the truth is subjective, and Superman represents truth and justice.
I'm here to fight for truth and justice in the American way.
In the footage, we see Rachel Brosnahan touring the set.
We just finished day 1 on Superman.
And we actually get to hear Superman talk when he hasn't just gotten the shit kicked out of him.
It's been a hell of a week at the office.
And then Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor. And you know, he actually auditioned to play both Superman and Batman, but then ended up playing the greatest DC villain, at least in my opinion. This is James Gunn fooling around with the Fortress robots we talked about earlier. And is anyone else stunned that these are a practical effect? I'm pretty sure it's a radio-controlled puppet, and it looks amazing. Now, the trailer is mostly showing BTS of shots that we already saw in the first trailer. Like, this particular scene is when Lex says,
"He's back."
And I think this is probably because Superman was so severely beaten that people thought he was dead. And Peter Safran teases this is not just a Superman movie.
We love the opportunity to play with the incredible DC library of characters and stories.
And this is another fun change from the Man of Steel. In this universe, superpowered people have already been around for a few years, just like how, in our world, we're already saturated with superheroes. Now, the Justice League in this movie are actually employed by a billionaire named Simon Stagg, so superheroes in this universe are already a kind of commodity, just like in the real world where, superheroes and their IPs are worth a lot of money. But then, in comes a Superman, a hero that cannot be bought. Again, I think Gunn is inserting a lot of meta commentary into this movie. Then we get these awesome shots of Hawkgirl, played by Isabella Merced from The Last of Us, Metamorpho, and he looks amazing, by the way. He's played by Anthony Carrigan, who you might recognize from another DC property. He played Victor Zsasz on Gotham.
Hello, everyone. My name is Victor Zsasz.
Now, Hawkgirl has different iterations. Sometimes her powers come from an Egyptian god, but my favorite version of her is when she's an alien from planet Thanagar. I don't think they're going to do that in this movie though, because they may want Superman to be the first extraterrestrial life on Earth. Then we see Lois on the Daily Planet set. This screen looks like it's showing the war in Barovia that we see later on in the BTS. Now, Barovia dates all the way back to Superman issue 2. It was a war-torn European nation where Superman interferes in their internal civil war. In this movie, Superman could intervene in the country as well, which would set off an international incident and maybe help turn people against him. We also see floods on this screen, and notice Lex Luthor on this monitor. I also love that the Daily Planet lobby has the classic globe that sits on top of the building and just these Art Deco murals on the wall. This is all very classic Superman, steeped in pre-war Americana. Here we see Wendell Pierce's Perry White, followed by this shot of Ultraman punching through the walls.
Wait, who's Ultraman?
So, this is exciting. In the comics, he is an evil version of Superman from Earth 3, but they're not saying who he is in this movie. There's some speculation that he works for Lex Luthor, or that he could secretly be Bizarro, the imperfect clone of Superman. This would make sense in this universe. Just like in the comics, Lex tries to create his own Superman and he creates Bizarro instead. This could also be Gunn making a meta-commentary on Zack Snyder's take on the hero. Like he is saying, hey, that old ultraviolet murdering Superman is not the real Superman at all. That was just a Bizarro Superman, and here's the real thing. Then there's a few more fun BTS shots. Hawkgirl, member of the Justice League, crashing through a window. We see explosions in Barovia. And Barovia is also the country where this kid is raising the Superman flag, making me think that Superman does interfere in this conflict. Now, earlier, we saw Clark holding a newspaper with a headline that reads, "Hammer of Barovia creates havoc downtown." And we also see that character emerging from this pod later in the BTS. So my theory is that after Superman interferes in Barovia, this supervillain retaliates with an attack on Metropolis. But we have other theories about that character we'll get into in just a little bit. And then we get this fun exchange about the trunks.
I wear my trunks on the outside of my pants. Like, it's liberating.
Now, the trunks were actually really difficult for James Gunn to figure out, so he asked Zack Snyder about it. And Snyder said, "I tried like a billion versions with the trunks and just never got there." Snyder's Superman was wearing a Kryptonian battlesuit, so it made sense for him not to wear trunks, whereas Cornyn's sweatsuit looks very much like it was the classic version made from the cloth in his Kryptonian rocket.
Cool costume.
Thanks. My mom made it for me.
And then we see James Gunn posing with some Lex bots. Now, these are Lex Luthor's own private security forces that he employs around Metropolis and sometimes deploys around the world. It seems like they were deployed to Barovia, and maybe Superman stepped in on the other side of the conflict. The woman with him is Maria Gabriela de Faria, and she is playing a character called the Engineer. Now, the Engineer is from a team called the Authority, another project that James Gunn confirmed is in development for the DCU. Her powers are that she has a nanite serum that allows her to shapeshift, duplicate, and create weapons, pretty much just morph into whatever she can think of. Next, we see Gunn sitting in a red and white, sleek and futuristic looking ship. Now, I doubt if this is Kryptonian because the Kryptonian technology we talked about earlier seemed very cold and alien. My bet is that this is the pod that the Hammer of Barovia emerges from in this shot. I also think that this Hammer of Barovia could be a suit designed by Lex Luthor. After all, it looks like his classic armor from the 70s and 80s, or like the Lex bots that we see in Superman for all seasons. So maybe Lex is trying to stir up this global conflict so he can get the US military to pay him for his weaponry and soldiers. And also notice this guy with the army is wearing an advanced suit, probably a suit created by Luthor. And then we get the return of this shot of Superman and Lois while there's some kind of threat outside the window. So in our last video, we speculated this could be the villain Braniac or the villain the Sun Eater who feeds off solar radiation. And this could explain why it's dark outside. And then we get various fun hero shots, and notice this is Jurgens Street, named after legendary Superman writer and artist Dan Jurgens, who actually wrote wrote the original Death of Superman comic, Superman 75. I love this shot of him lifting a car, very Action Comics #1. And notice, in this shot, we can see Cornset's stunt double standing behind him. And then we get Frank Grillo playing Rick Flag Sr. talking about his love of the character.
Superman was my original superhero, and it started in comics.
So Grillo, of course, played Crossbones in the MCU, but recently he voiced the character Rick Flag Sr. on Creature Commandos, which is part of this universe. So the DCU is going to have the same actors play these characters in animation and live action. In fact, the only reason he doesn't have white hair like his animated version is because he had a scheduling conflict with this shooting, so he couldn't dye his hair.
Hey, that guy's name sounds familiar.
Well, because Rick Flag's son, Rick Flag Jr., was the former leader of the Suicide Squad, and he was killed in Gunn's The Suicide Squad movie. Now, as confirmed in Creature Commandos, parts of that movie are still going to be canon to this universe. So we could actually see Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn cameo in this movie, and Supergirl, or really any other DCU project. And then we see Eddie Gathegi, who is playing Mr. Terrific, another member of the Justice League. So Mr. Terrific is a genius inventor, originally having no powers. He uses T-spheres, these small metallic balls, to make him undetectable to all technology. He was originally a member of the Justice Society of America and later formed a team called the Terrifics. Then we see a sign for Stagg Industries, and like I said, this is a company run by Simon Stagg, another evil businessman in the DCU, similar to Lex Luthor. Now, in the film, the current Justice League, Hawkgirl, Green Lantern, and Mr. Terrific are all working for Stagg Industries. And there's an interesting note here about the costumes. The Justice League uniforms all have the same look because they are homogenized and corporate, whereas Clark's suit is original and made by his mom. Again, I think that Gunn could be making a commentary on superhero movies. He's spoken out against studio films that felt like they were made on an assembly line, and he's trying to say that his new universe will be different. Then there are some quick character shots, including this massive reveal of Lex Luthor in the Fortress of Solitude. So, this is also taken from those original Superman films, specifically Superman 2, when Gene Hackman's Luthor used the crystals to learn about Superman and his weaknesses. I think this could be where Lex gets these images of the Kryptonian battleships that he uses to spew out negative propaganda against Superman. And check out this person standing next to Luthor. Now, it's kind of hard to tell, but we think this could be the engineer in her nanite form, or this could be Braniac or a servant of Braniac's. In a previous trailer, we saw Superman fighting a giant monster, which could be one of the creatures that Braniac keeps in his intergalactic zoo. And that could be where Superman is here when it seems like he's trapped among many cages and he's trying to bust out. So overall, I am so excited about this teaser. It focuses on the tone and the theme of the movie, and it seems like everybody is so excited to tell this story and launch this universe. But what did you guys think about these teasers? Let me know down in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.